close on those developing moments. Let's keep the conversation going now on what we can expect next. Former SEC senior trial counsel Howard Fischer joins us, now a partner at Moses and Singer. Howard, it's good to have you. Just on that question about bail, lot of talk, as Kate mentioned, about how big it is, $250 million. She mentioned the parents put up equity in their home, which is only worth $4 million. So just to be clear, did Bankman-Fried pay that money? Does that mean that he lied when he told reporters, including our colleague Andrew Ross Orkin, that he was basically broke when he can afford a $250 million bail payment?
It's a little unclear. One of the things that's been reported is that other people have come forward, and it's a little I haven't seen the bail papers, so I'm a little unclear as to who exactly put that money forward. But generally speaking, you don't have to put up the full amount. You basically, various people will pledge that they'll be responsible for that amount if he doesn't show up at any hearing. But as the judge pointed out, he is so notorious at this point that it'd be very difficult for him to flee and to go anywhere where he wouldn't be recognized immediately.
And why was it so big in comparison to, say, Bernie Madoff or Elizabeth Holmes?
I think there's a recognition, and this is a dawning recognition, both in the judicial system, in the executive system, and with legislatures as well, that the scope of the crypto crisis is huge. And for a long time, various elected officials have been advising that government regulators leave it alone, that they let the market develop, that they let entrepreneurs develop whatever technologies and systems that the people would want in order to have this system develop. And I think there's a recognition now that that was perhaps the wrong thing to do. And if you leave off regulating something in which people are investing billions and billions of dollars, you're only asking for trouble later on down the line. So I think that the bail in this case reflects the increased seriousness and attention being paid by all parts of government to crypto issues, the lack of regulation, and the incredible harm that a crypto collapse can cause not only investors but customers of the exchanges as well.
How do you square the urgency around regulation that FTX appears to have brought to the surface with Gensler's comments in the Times, where he says securities law is quite robust and covers much of this activity? Is this sort of part of the process, and you don't need to lean on additional regulation to make the environment safer?
Well, that's a great question, and it points up to a fundamental issue, which is, are the systems and the laws that we have in place now sufficient to regulate the industry, or do we need additional regulations? And the SEC has been incredibly aggressive in asserting that it has the tools and that a lot of the coins that are being traded are in fact securities. And in fact, if you look at the SEC case against Ellison, they argue that the FTT, which was the proprietary coin that FTX used, was in fact a security. And this is part of a general trend that the SEC has taken in various cases in which they argue that different kinds of coins, different kinds of digital assets are in fact securities. They should be registered. They should be regulated as such. And if there's any kind of misconduct in the selling of these securities, that could be prosecuted as securities fraud.
So the next court appearance is January 3rd. He has not submitted a plea on these charges. What do you expect, and what is the chain of events from here? The Elizabeth Holmes case took years. Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, these cases can take a long time, and what the U.S. attorney said and has said consistently throughout this case is that they're looking for other people to come forward. And one of the things that they've accomplished with the plea bargains of Ellison and Wang is basically fire a shot over the bow of anybody else who is senior and who is deeply involved in the misconduct that they've identified. And that shot is telling those people, come forward now. We'll make some arrangement with you that's going to be a lot better than if you don't and we catch you and we bring you in against your will. So I think what we're going to see in the immediate near future is other people coming forward, other people pleading, and then the next step of this is really up to Sam Bankman-Fried. I would think that facing the kind of charges he's facing, he does have some incentive to try to reach a deal. On the other hand, I would have thought that a rational person, once they're facing these charges, would have never talked to the media, would have never gone on various shows and put forward his side of the story. So it's very hard to tell what he's going to do. And one of the things he may be considering is that he may be effectively facing life in prison. And given those incredible consequences for his conduct, he may think it's in his best interest to take a shot and go to trial. And if that's the case, it could be a long time before we see the end of this.
Well, he's argued, he's basically laid out his argument a number of times in these interviews that it was a series of managerial missteps and he takes responsibility, but stopped short at fraud. So I do wonder how tough of a case that's going to be for him, especially now that 2 lieutenants have pled guilty to a number of criminal charges.
Yeah, and this is essential in any kind of major prosecution, is that you need cooperators. You need people who are at the top of the management to say, here's what we were doing. We knew it was wrong. And when we were having these communications about it, we were trying to conceal it, trying to make sure that people didn't find out what we were doing, and we tried to keep the misconduct going. So it's going to be if Ellison and Wang come in and say, here is what we did, and here are the documents that show that we did this, here are the chats, here are the emails, it's going to be very difficult for Bankman-Fried to continue to assert his innocence if 2 of his top lieutenants are saying, well, no, actually, it's not that innocent at all.
Howard, thank you. Appreciate the perspective here. Very valuable today. Howard Fischer.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.